It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Robin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuchendo. Thanks a lot for joining us. The start of another week. The past week was quite eventful, especially on the economic front. We did hear lots of policy announcements, slash reversal, slash labor and other stakeholders in the sector speaking up, especially with regards to new charges that the central bank has introduced, or at least plans to introduce for Nigerians, coming at a time when so many other charges and taxes and are just burdening Nigerians at this time, coupled with all the subsidy removals that have been happening. So it's been quite a week of mounting economic pressure for Nigerians. And we're going to be starting off the show today trying to understand how Nigerians can, if possible, navigate this and plan economically for the long year ahead and probably years to come, because the government has told us clearly that this is a very long battle and we have to tighten our belts. Don't know how much tighter it can get, but we'll see how we can go around that. I'm joined here in the studio by Progress Felix. Thanks a lot for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me today, Ebuka. Thank
yes.
you so much.
So, like I said, there's a lot happening in the economy. We did hear from the central bank in the past week about charges being introduced for cybersecurity. Nigerians are wondering, when does this end? We had the fuel subsidy removal. We've had electricity skyrocket for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Food inflation has not tried to come down at any point. The Naira looked like it was starting to go back down. Now we're seeing a reversal of all of that. So there doesn't seem to be any respite anywhere. Is the government right in saying that these things are necessary? Or is there a counter-argument which some have offered to say that this can be done with palliatives on the side? And how do these palliatives even work when every single Nigerian is affected?
Okay, thank you very much for the question.
Yeah.
So the big elephant in the room is, why now? The policy as regards the cybersecurity levy was not brought about by the current administration. The levy was a policy from the Goodluck Ebele Jonathan's administration, and the big question is, why now? Like you did mention, we've seen a lot of pressure on the Nigerian citizens in terms of various levies coming in from the Central Bank of Nigeria. And the question still remains that in a country where inflation still remains elevated, you still have the Central Bank grappling with foreign exchange depreciation. You still have high cost of production for those in the manufacturing sector. You have high cost of transportation that has been exacerbated on the back of increasing energy prices and also increase the removal of fuel subsidy. The question becomes, why now? And that's the big elephant in the room. And if you would ask me, I think perhaps it might be a good policy in the far future, but currently I don't think it's the best of approach, because considering the current economic climate in the country, I don't think the Nigerian people they have that level of cushion. I don't think they have that level of cushion to take on this levy, because looking at the structure of that policy, for a product or service that is worth ₦1 million, you get to pay $1,050,000, which means that you are indirectly supporting inflation, and the prices of these goods or services continue to rise, and then it becomes counterproductive to the initial direction of the CBN in terms of battling inflation. So the bigger question becomes, why now? And left to me, I don't think now is the best time. And I think the House of Assembly, in cooperation with the presidency, had given that direction to reverse that policy for the now.
So the plain devil's advocates here a bit now. The why now is a very valid question, because like I said at the start, there's a lot happening. But there's also the argument that when is the right time? You know, we did talk about fuel subsidy removal in 2011, 2012. We knew how that ended with all the protests nationwide. Somebody even said that the current government was very instrumental to making sure that didn't happen at the time when, quote unquote, there was oil money. Correct. Much more than we do have now. That could have been a good time, but people felt that it wasn't even a good time at the time. You did mention that this policy as well was introduced by that same government at a time when there was some oil money, at least. If that wasn't a good time and this isn't a good time, is there ever going to be a good time? I guess is the question I'm trying to ask. Is this something that we can ever do without having to do this sort of hard reset that's going on now?
Okay. For me, I see the implementation of this policy not as a one-off. I see it in terms of implementation. I feel the government can take a staggered approach to it, not just to weigh in on the citizens at once. They could probably have a staggered approach to it. Say, have a minimum threshold for which that levy will be charged. Let's say you place a threshold of, say, 1 million. All transfers done electronically over 1 million will attract this levy. And once people settle in on that, then you expand the basket. But the question then becomes, for a transfer of 1,000 naira, why do I have to pay a cybersecurity levy for it? So I feel you may be right saying there have been a lot of conversations around when would be the best time. But I think in the implementation of this, I think the government can take a staggered approach to it so that the citizens do not just feel the direct weight of these levies on them.
Yeah, I think it's something that the central bank governor has consistently said, because people have said at least he seems active. He's trying out things. Most of them are not working. Some are working.
Correct.
We're seeing how things are evolving. But there's also the argument that, you know, the fiscal side of things might not be doing as much as the Ministry of Finance, you know, the government, to support what the CBN is doing. Is that what you're seeing, right? Because the CBN can only make these policies and hope that the fiscal side of things, you know, matches it, which is why even when we saw the Naira falling, some called it artificial. Inflation didn't go anywhere. It still was where it was. And people have wondered, what should the government be doing with the CBN, you know, for these things to be cushioned? We all know it's not going to be an overnight fix.
Correct.
But what are we not doing right yet?
Okay, you had that spot on. There seems to be not a disconnect, but a lag. Like you did mention, a lot has been happening on the monetary side, but there seems to be a lag in transmission on the fiscal side. However, a plus that has happened for this administration is that we have seen some level of correlation between the fiscal side and the monetary side, such that the monetary side is not going in direction X and the fiscal side is going in direction Y. Although they are both headed in the same direction, we've not seen as much aggressiveness on both sides. And like you mentioned, what exactly should the fiscal side be doing? The central bank has done its best from the monetary perspective in terms of its monetary tightening policies, through managing liquidity, OMO auctions. I believe on the fiscal side, we need more structural intervention from the government in terms of looking at inflation. If you look at the basket of inflation, food inflation constitutes about 50% of that basket. And what is driving food inflation? You have high cost of production, you have high cost of transportation, and you have electricity cost. And if the government can have direct structural intervention to these sectors, you would see that most of these hike in prices that we see on the food inflation front would largely be reduced. And to also add, the government needs to support local production. And in supporting local production, it still boils down to encouraging local producers, improving the cost of production for these guys so that they make sufficient enough margin that makes those in the market become willing to patronize locally made products.
Yeah, very valid points. I think we're joined virtually by Jonathan Ikeolumba, I believe. Jonathan, can you hear me if you're there? Okay, we'll get back to Jonathan. I don't think he's there. But I think what I want to ask now, because a lot of you financial people always tell us, no matter what the economic situation is, you have to have the discipline to save, right? Being able to save in hard times makes you a better financial manager or whatever it is. And at a time like this, people are wondering, how is that supposed to happen? I, for one, for example, have spent the last couple of weeks, all I've been doing is paying bills. I happen to be one of the band A people. And my life is, I can't even explain how crazy my electric bills have become. There's that. It doesn't mean you're still not buying fuel or diesel for your generators regularly. Right. You have all these charges that just appear out of nowhere. We know what the fuel situation is now, how much it is. Yes, the queues are away, but the price is still where it is. The Naira or inflation is still happening. So there's just so much. Is it possible for a Nigerian today? I mean, we're starting to hear, thankfully, some conversations around, the minimum wage, going up and all of that. But how possible is it at a time like this to be financially or fiscally responsible? Is that possible, you think?
Yes, very possible. Just to also add that the current situation in Nigeria is not novel and is not particular to the Nigerian government. So let's put it this way: basic economics, resources would always be scarce. There won't arrive a time where you would have sufficient enough resources because
for everybody.
Because the needs are unlimited. Resources what is scarce. So having this at the back of your mind that whether the government becomes good, bad, whatever direction it goes, resources will always be scarce. So as an individual, you need to be very prudent with your finances. In terms of saving to what end? I think that's a conversation that most people do not like to have. There's always that frontliner conversation of just save, just save, just save. But the question is, saving to what end? To what purpose? If you are saving for an investment that would provide you a real return on the initial amount saved, then maybe you're looking at growing your wealth. But if all you are doing is saving, there's the side of inflation that would eventually erode your savings. Where we see things like somebody says, I'm trying to save for a car, the car is 2 million. And when I eventually save the 2 million, the car now is 5 million. So you need to save with an intention. And when you're saving for a car that is 2 million today, you need to factor in possible inflation. What would this car be worth in 2 years' time when I eventually save that money? That should be what you'll be saving towards. And the country is quite tight at the moment, to be rather upfront. But the financial discipline to stay prudent with your resources is required in whatever economic situation we find ourselves, whether in a prosperous one or in ones where we are trying to navigate the waters. I believe staying financially prudent is still a way forward.
Yeah. What are some of the things Nigerians can do at a time like this? Because I know, yes, everybody's complaining. Every single person is complaining, no matter what class of society you're in right now. But it would be nice to start hearing, okay, is there anything we can start doing at a time like this? For those who might have whatever it is, to say, okay, maybe this is a good time to invest somewhere or to put money away somewhere. We did see with COVID, for example, while the world was in crisis, a lot of people made money then.
Sure.
It was a time of boom for a lot of people, especially those in tech and all of that. What are some things or sectors Nigerians can start looking at? I hear agriculture a lot. You talked about production and manufacturing as a good place as well. Is this a good time to start thinking about things in those ends? And is it really viable? And how long-term is it? Because Nigerians don't really like long-term things, especially at the time when you want to start seeing returns on your funds. Yeah,
so currently in a bid to further tightening the economy, the CBN has consistently increased interest rates. And you see the treasury bills trading around 25% yields for the 1 year paper. And for those that want quick return, you could push in your investable sums into the treasury bills. In terms of what specific innovations or businesses people can delve into, my opinion would be that currently you need to be able to envisage what the future of that sector is and plug into that direction. So for instance, you know that in tech, the next level would evolve around things like AI, robotics. And the next question should be not just looking at what it is now, you need to be able to envisage what will be the future of that particular sector. Speaking about agriculture, not just subsistence farming, you need to be able to look at what is the next level for industrialization in agriculture and how can I plug into it. It becomes an issue if, as an individual, all you can envisage is what is currently happening in the industry or the sector, and you're trying to solve that problem. Meanwhile, the next 5-6 years, the problem you're trying to solve has evolved past your solution, and then it becomes an issue. So specific sectors, I'd mentioned tech. You could look into things like AI, robotics. I've mentioned agriculture as well. There's a lot of need for food in the country. I've mentioned manufacturing. Manufacturing is capital intensive, and which means that it's going to be an area where the government will have its eyes on things around construction as well, because those areas drive growth in the country. So there are various other sectors that an individual can look into. Perhaps maybe personal findings and personal studies can help you drill down into what specific niche you'd want to go into for yourself.
Looking at the trajectory of, where the economy is now, with what has happened with the naira, with what is happening with inflation, with all those policies that we've seen from government, how do you see the rest of 2024 shaping up? More of the same? Worse?
Mixed. Mixed. Yeah, so I say mixed because we've seen some headwinds. Some headwinds from inflation. I think the inflation print for February showed some slight decline month on month, although year on year inflation was still elevated, although that number was slightly dialed back in March. But going into the later part of the year, we might see inflation see a slight reversal in inflation on the back of some what's it called again? On the back of previous numbers for the last year. So baseline figures. So those may actually impact inflation figures that would have later in the year. Inflation is actually projected to close the year in and around 28%, thereabout. But speaking to the currency direction for the country in terms of the value of the naira, going into the rest of the year, I think the world should be cautious. All investors need to be cautious in their approach going into the rest of the year. A lot can happen, and a lot would eventually happen. So the word for investors on the foreign exchange side should be slightly cautious. General outlook for the economy, for me, would be slightly optimistic, maybe mixed. Yeah.
Well, thanks for giving us just a bit of a glimmer of hope there. Slightly optimistic, and Nigerians will take that at a time like this. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Progress, and